the years, the Wellington Civic Trust has held many seminars like these. None of them set out to be solutions, but all of them were done to help move complex things along the path to good solutions.
I think this is a very interesting seminar that's being held on Saturday morning, because the interaction of a city with organisations and organisations with a city is one of the aspects that really leads to a strong environment. And what we have here in terms of my particular role is the Wellington City on the one hand and Victoria City on the other hand. And so we've got a major organisation in a great city. And if they work together, if they respect each other's role, then this city will be even greater, and Victoria University will be greater too. Universities must never see themselves in isolation. Universities are actually there, particularly through its research, particularly through the quality of its graduates, to contribute to the community, contribute to the betterment of the nation, of society. That's what a university is all about. It's not an end in itself. So how does Victoria benefit from a creative, vibrant Wellington? Well, the university benefits without any question from its accessibility. It's compact, it's walkable, it's got economic opportunities in the city, there are employment opportunities. It's a wonderful place for social and cultural opportunities with the student experience, which is cultural, recreation and social. There's an outstanding urban and natural environment, and that is of course the harbour and the waterfront and the wonderful hills that surround us. And you couldn't ask for a greater natural features than you get there. If the city can create an environment where there are good employment opportunities, where there are great opportunities for recreation and for the development of interests, be it sporting, recreation, be it simply walking in our magnificent hills that surround our beautiful harbour, or whether it's in following the opera, the orchestras, the ballet. If these things are vibrant in a city, but again, let me say, coupled with good employment opportunities, because unless a city works economically, you actually won't attract people to it. So there's those two things, an economic attractiveness that a city's got to give emphasis to, but in addition to that, if they can couple that with a very attractive place for people to live, to people to work, and dare I say also people to play, then you've got a measure there that is very attractive to the organisations which exist in that city.
So Lux is a light festival that has been running for about 3 years now, in its kind of current iteration. We grew it out of the university, but we've had great support from Wellington City Council, which has been fantastic. I'll talk more about the kind of collaboration aspect of these sorts of events in a little bit. One of the major things that we did, and the event runs from Leeds and Eva Street all the way down through Opera House Lane, and then kind of spills out onto the waterfront, goes over to Papa, and all the way up through Frank Kidd's Park up to the kind of Shed 5 Basin up there. What we did is we worked with businesses that were along the route, Wellington Chocolate Factory, New F&F, St John's Bar, the Wellington, and numerous others, to sort of work out how they could benefit from the larger numbers of people that would be walking around along these spaces at night. So we had them staying open. And anecdotally, I dropped into the chocolate factory one evening, and they were just in pure panic with the number of people that were in that space trying to buy their chocolate at 9 o'clock on a Sunday evening. And really that notion, as City again was talking about, making the fact that Wellington is a walkable city, having some of these kind of areas of interest, like the bridge that we lit up, and being more permanent, could make that sort of the walkability of the city, and safe actually. This was also a kind of way of lighting that space up and making it safer. Could be very valuable for us. Bringing people together. We had 65,000 people, that's the estimate, come through Lux over 9 days, and I think at night over winter, that was quite an achievement, and it was just a fantastic vibe. Sevens brings older people into the city, but it's a very, very different environment. There was a lot of children walking through this event, really enjoying themselves, really engaging with the event, and I think that these events, really being able to bring people together as a kind of social opportunity is extremely important. Attracting tourists, Celia mentioned this. Vivid Sydney is a much larger event in Sydney and obviously has a larger population, but they had 1.5 million people come to see the Light Festival at Vivid over a 3-week period, which contributed 20 million to the economy over that period. If we can do that to a sort of similar scale within Wellington, and I do think it's possible with these large-scale outside events, that would be quite an incredible boost for the local economy.
Wellington is a wonderful walkable capital. Walking, for me, is the invisible glue that holds a successful city together. From the point of view of increasing the walkability of the city, one of the things that people talk about that I really strongly agree with is having more street trees. They shelter people, they moderate the wind, and they just give people a daily dose of nature on the way to and from work. We've got some natural advantages, the topography, the hills that surround us, the town belt that, as well as offering lovely recreational and biodiversity opportunities, it actually constrains the urban fabric. So we have a very, very compact downtown between Te Ahomairangi Hill and Mount Victoria. Everything in the capital is enclosed and is accessible. One thing that will help increase the numbers of people walking along our streets, increase the footfall for the retail, increase the audiences for the opera and the theatre and so on, is having more people living right downtown Wellington. And the urban growth plans that we've just consulted on looks like we could have a lot more people living in the Te Aro area over the next 15 to 20 years. Not only are we the capital, we are the most walkable city in Australasia. So I also wanted to talk about the capital as a place to lead the clean green image, and there's lots of cliches about the clean green image and there's lots of challenges to it, but one of the things that we should be doing is making sure that our beautiful harbour is clean enough to swim in, is clean enough to walk along and actually see the stingrays and the dolphins and the orca chasing the stingray. And one of the things we're doing is putting water-sensitive urban design guidelines out, and it's a big question, do we push those through to a regulation or not? There's been a little bit of work done through Waitangi Park, taking the Waimapihi stream through the reed beds. But we could do a lot more. Once upon a time there were 7 open, beautiful streams leading into the harbour. Now they're pretty much all concreted over with big pipes. There's already been a little bit of work done through Waitangi Park with daylighting and taking the Waimapihi stream through the reed beds. We're also at the cenotaph end of the city putting in an art piece that shows the route of the Waipiro stream, I think it is, and that just reminds people that these streams were here and they are still of deep cultural significance.
Urban sprawl, defined here as the uncontrolled and excessive spatial expansion of cities, is one of the world's most significant and least well documented market failures, leading to inefficient use of land, capital and other resources. So it argues really compellingly for the benefits of denser, compact and connected development. When you look at the firstly the older demographic, it's actually pretty consistent, pretty uniform. But then when you look at the 20 to 34, there's a big exodus from most of the areas except the central city. And it shows that it's a rapidly urbanising trend here, particularly focused on the younger generation. Wellington's vision and plan going forward needs to be really focused on providing the kind of choices that are going to make that sort of living possible, and continue and build on the good trends that have been already happening.
There's stuff happening in Wellington that would have been just astonishing a few years ago. Perfectly normal, reasonable, affluent people are moving into the city in numbers that are pretty unprecedented, especially millennials. They are quite happy not to own cars. They could, but they choose not to. They're preferring to live really, really close to the places they work and play. They prefer medium density housing done well, over the quarter-acre section. And that's including the people who want to have kids and have a nice life. They are preferring to take public transport sometimes when they could drive. And shockingly, from the latest census statistics, more people are choosing to cycle for transport in Wellington. People don't travel for fun, right? We travel because we want to get somewhere and do some living. It's the origin, it's the destination. Apart from a small number of people, you don't generally travel just for funsies. But the interesting riff on this means to an end idea is that transport has an impact on the things we pass through, and the different kinds of transport we use can affect the living we get to do at the end. One of the transport modes that takes away the most from the city, the private car. I'm not anti-car. I love cars in the right place and the right time. For a livable city, we need to take a step back and go, means to an end, means to an end. Let's look at where people need to go and when, make sure that we're promoting the transport modes that actually give to the city with both hands, instead of giving and taking away far more. Don't be afraid of change, be afraid of getting stuck where we are, because we're still doing wrong a little bit better.
Personally, I'm very obsessed with the idea of density and the kind of vibrancy that you get in cities which are dense, and I witness a lot of aversion to higher density living, which I think is kind of a cultural thing. And as an architect, I think that's related to the fact that maybe we don't have a lot of precedent for it, and we don't have a lot of good precedent for how density can be done well. And I don't know if many of you were at the talk last night, but that was the subject of the title of it, was density done well. So it's basically the idea that yes, everyone's afraid of density, and this is a global phenomenon. In the guy that was talking was from Vancouver, but that's a very common thing. But the fact that it can be done well, and when it is done well, there's kind of social, cultural, ecological, economic, like a vast array of benefits to it. But the first step in doing that is convincing people, including my generation and older generations and younger generations, that it is good, which as an architect I see, or as a aspiring architect, I think that's where design has to be important, because yes, you can encourage high density living, but people have to want it, and people are going to partially want it through having an attachment to it, and that's the whole idea of social capital and cultural capital. Like people have to value that kind of lifestyle in order for it to, it's democracy. It's got to happen through demand.
Yesterday I was really privileged to meet another really interesting guy that has fascinating ideas about how really good change can happen through a kind of organic process of people talking to each other and two people talking to another two. And in other words, the ideas develop from the community, the people that work in the cities. The ideas actually grow in a kind of organic virus way, much the same as good ideas work and bad ideas fail. He had a very good, interesting young knowledge of how good changes can happen through lots of just people talking to each other, and the good ideas float to the surface and the bad ideas seem to die off, like a lot of things in life.
So we talk about Oases from a development's point of view. I think Tiara is a desert. There is nothing we can do down there on a commercial basis that works. I own a piece of land in Frederick Street. It's got the old Chinese mission there. I've been sitting on it now for 5 years trying to develop or wait for a development other than building an ugly box full of little boxes on top of a shop that no one ever goes to, and so it just stays empty. It'll probably end up as one of Wellington's pocket parks or something like that. What do? Put yourself as a developer, a bit of land in Taranaki, and this is what I think we need to be talking about. You can't build offices because no one wants offices. Wellington's a shrinking city. You can't build decent apartments because, and shame on the Wellington Civic Trust wants to flog all the waterfront down to the fat cats who can afford to buy decent apartments. What are we doing? We're just flogging off the waterfront just so the fat cats can come down there and sell their big houses in Kandara and realign the city.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big question of design actually. I mean, you know, unfortunately a lot of designers do design cities. But it's a form and function thing, isn't it? That you design something that naturally is created by the people's behaviour and movement around. You don't just put a park there and expect people to sit there and lie there in their bikinis reading books and drinking gin. You know, well, actually that's what does happen, isn't it? People do sit in there and drink gin.
Wellington is a backyard place. We all kind of get on with one another and we have a wide variety of relationships within the town. And I think our public spaces need to reflect that because they need to reflect really flexible use. I would like to see a lot less concept and aesthetic in our public spaces and a lot more flexibility and design for comfort. And comfort means in Wellington, get rid of the wind however you can. And I've put up the photograph of Queen Victoria because she's kind of walked around the city. She's been in a few spots. You can see that she's there over near the embassy. You can see the embassy there. And the thing that I noticed is that the foregrounds are kind of a park, and there's kids sitting around on the people lounging around in the sun on the steps of Queen Victoria, and I think that's really interesting. That photograph says to me that Kent and Cambridge Terrace in the early days was warmer and not the cold wind tunnel it is now. And I'm thinking, what is behind the photographer? Because now, come around the corner of Kent and Cambridge and the wind doth blow, it just does. And every day, no matter what the weather really, it's a very rare day when there isn't some sort of chill there. And I've never, and Queen Victoria's moved, she's moved further down the road, but I've never seen anybody lounging on the steps of Queen Victoria. I mean, ever. In 35 years. So to me, I think the successful spaces are the ones that have solved the wind problem.
Beijing, another capital city sitting on the left-hand side there. A lot of the Beijing streets are very wide. The Beijing streets are about 60 or 70 metres wide. And they've set up lots of these streets so that half the street is park. So what a beautiful idea that there's these wonderful parks that run along the length of the street. People are doing Tai Chi and all those sorts of things, and they're having coffee and that sort of thing in the morning. And the traffic still works very well. So the 68-metre easement for the road has actually been divided in half. Great idea to create some sort of character. In the middle we have kind of the sad state in which we see Kent and Cambridge. Look at the lushness of that as opposed to the Kent and Cambridge, what we've got there. Kent and Cambridge is 42 or something like that metres wide, not as wide as these streets here. But there's that great opportunity of what could happen, notwithstanding that Queen Victoria could still be there, but we could certainly create something beautiful like this. The Ramblas I've just finished this is the last one. The Ramblas in Barcelona is coincidentally, the Ramblas is basically a creek. That's what it means in Catalonia. Ramblas is a creek, which is exactly what Cambridge Terrace was. It was once, you know, that idea that it was a creek by Taranaki Street that came down there. The reason it was left over in the Barcelona fabric was because it was a creek and no one wanted to build on it. So we had a 30 to 40 metre wide street which cranks down the hill, doesn't form a straight line, but they created this beautiful, the fact that it was left over created this wonderful leftover landscape which we know looks like this. 30 or 40 metres wide, so it's no wider than Taranaki Street, than Kent and Cambridge. It still has cars down either side. You can't see the cars in this picture, but there are still cars, there's still parking happening, you still catch a taxi anywhere you want to go. And yet the whole street's about this wonderful activity that occurs in the middle. That's the possibility.
Where would we actually want more pedestrian traffic? Where should the emphasis be more on pedestrians or even on cycling? So it's more like what is lacking is a bit of a range of different, or order, if you will, of street shapes, but also of uses in those streets. So we can actually start to identify the networks. So one of those streets that is indicated in the Central City Framework, which roughly talks about north-south boulevards and about east-west streets. The north-south boulevards are being identified as, some of them, Victoria Street, Taranaki, and Cambridge, is where some of the growth, the urban growth in Te Ara is going to take place. Victoria Street is one of the first cities that Wellington City Council is now looking at a transformation of that space, and I think it's very appropriate to be Victoria Street because of the edges and the feel that it has of more of a rear of the city. It's almost like a very peripheral kind of environment as opposed to an inner city street. So we're looking at basically Dixon Street through to Abel Smith. I won't go to all the detail. Topography, it was mentioned already, the Taranaki Street. Cambridge would be basically designed as a canal reserve, with a canal reserve in it, and that's why basically it's the size that it is at the moment. For Cambridge, I think it's really exciting to look at these different options. I think Jolene's sort of curvy kind of proposal is very interesting because it kind of talks of adding the open space to the sides as opposed to through the middle, as it is currently, where nobody's really using it at the moment. And maybe by creating an asymmetrical kind of situation, where the green would be on one side and maybe the more of an urban situation on the other side, it would be a more usable kind of space, and perhaps a more tolerable maybe as well as in climate and wind.
If in fact a light rail solution had in fact been adopted, it would actually have opened up all sorts of possibilities for urban design, and particularly around the Basin Reserve. The existing state highway could be rerouted. The southbound state highway could be rerouted through Taranaki Street to create a boulevard without the state highway traffic in it, in the Kent-Cambridge couplet. And if in fact, rather than busways, which are really just specialised roadways, we in fact had light rail running through the area and around the Basin Reserve like that, in fact that could be used to widen the total planted area, if you like, in the median, the total green area. And this is very commonly done overseas. Unlike buses and cars, light rail is very good at sharing space with other uses, be it pedestrian areas or lawns or parks or whatever. These are just a few examples of where that's done, and this would be a possibility that would be opened up if in fact, as Professor Newman recommends, the spine study conclusions are scrapped and we in fact go back to extending the rail spine through the whole region using light rail as was planned until very recently.
pleasant place for people to picnic, to congregate, to sit in the sun, to play and so on. And then further out, and particularly our hope as Wellingtonians here, as well as a national ministry, is you use it to sort of integrate and connect this zone to the waterfront and the central city. So I'm hoping still, notwithstanding Celia's comments before, for great things in the city's development, both of Cambridge Kent, but also Taranaki Street, and then pull people both up and down between the sites. We did see this as part of a revitalisation of this part of the city and a way of connecting Mount Cook to the central city in a better way. We wanted to create a usable space that was suitable for commemorations, and we wanted to strengthen the heritage value of the entire area. I think in terms of the discussion today and the oases and avenues, this is a great slide of what the original concept was. And if you look, we've talked a lot about Kent and Cambridge and Taranaki, but you see the original conception was a grand avenue straight down the middle of the square that we're talking about. That vision, fantastic vision, I think, lovely picture as well, never realised, but we're getting a wee bit closer as we go.
Now, when I was young, I spent 3 years living in Cambridge in the UK. And Cambridge is a very windy place. The wind comes off the Arctic almost without interruption and hits Cambridge, hits the fens, and it's cold. It's a cold, chilly wind. Yet Cambridge has these magnificent gathering places all through it that are courtyards. And so I think that wherever we've been able in our public spaces to make a kind of a courtyard, even if it's just a three-sided courtyard facing that's sheltered from the prevailing wind, then I think people gather there. Get rid of the great drawings and the concept spaces and actually start to look at how people use the place already and enhance it. It's not something that we're used to doing in New Zealand that well. We don't have a culture where when an organisation, when an institution decides to do something, we actually go out and have a really, really, really careful look at how it's being used in the first place and then enhance it. We tend to be the kind of pioneer thing where we throw everything aside and we start again with a new idea that's sort of cool and groovy. I think we need more artists on our boards that are deciding things for our city, because I think artists bring a breadth of vision and they are often sort of put into a slot where they're not very practical people. But I actually think, you know, when you think artist, you think aesthetic, but actually I think artists are quite practical people. So I would like to see more artists involved in looking forward to what's happening in our city, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk on this subject, being a filmmaker.